Intermittent fasting can shave years off your life. Be afraid. Be very afraid. Now, if you've been using intermittent fasting to improve your health, which I hope you have, then when you see a headline like that, it gives you pause. You're like, well, am I doing the right thing? Is this actually dangerous? In this video, we're going to look at a recent research article that talks about skipping meals and some of the headlines in popular media that greatly exaggerated the findings of this study. I think you'll be pleased by what you learn in this video. I'm Dr. Ken Berry, family physician. Let's talk about intermittent fasting and whether it will kill you or not. So here's the study in question. It was published in the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. You may have seen the trademark term Eat Right. This is literally the organization in the United States that registers all dietitians. So this is a pretty big deal when it comes to what you eat and how you should eat. These are kind of the accepted authorities in the United States. It was published in August of 2022, but there's still headlines trickling out. The U.S. News and World Report said skipping meals could shave years off your life. Studyfinds.org says intermittent fasting leads to earlier death. Study suggests restricted eating not so good after all. And my favorite from the New York Post, intermittent fasting diet could actually send you to an early grave. New study. So now let's actually look at this paper and talk about it. This paper contains no new research whatsoever. It uses the data from the NHANES data set, which was collected between the years 1999 and 2014. This study had nothing to do with intermittent fasting. This study was entitled Skipping Meals. That's what it was about, whether skipping meals is good for you or not. Now, considering the fact that Dr. Jason Fung, my friend, didn't publish his book about intermittent fasting until 2016, how many of the people in this study do you think were actually consciously intermittent fasting? Think about that for a second. Intermittent fasting hadn't even become popular then. So this was well before the intermittent fasting rediscovery. And so this paper has nothing to do with intermittent fasting. This paper studied 24,011 participants aged 40 and up. And so the first problem is this study was done before intermittent fasting was even a thing. Second problem is all the data in this study was collected using food frequency questionnaires. Now, I've talked about this in other videos. Basically, a food frequency questionnaire, they would give it to the participants once or twice during all the years of this study. And they would ask questions like, how many cups of ribs have you eaten in a month? And you're like, that's been a long time. I don't know. I don't remember. And so really a food frequency questionnaire is a best guess. And then the researchers pretend that what you get on the food frequency questionnaire is actually data that you can use then for credible research, which I have a huge problem with. So as you may have already guessed, this is an epidemiological perspective study. So by definition, it cannot show causation. It can only show a possible association between one variable and another variable. You cannot use this to say things like intermittent fasting will shave years off your life. That's not what this study is designed to do. It's designed to show a possible association. And then if the association is robust enough, then we'll design a better designed study to actually tease out the question, is this thing causing the other thing? So this study was not about intermittent fasting. This study was about meal skipping. Now, there's a certain type of person that eats 3 meals a day. And we can make all kinds of generalizations about that person. But on average, they are in a settled family setting. Their finances are pretty well handled. They probably have a job or at least some kind of income. They probably are aware that certain foods are good for you and certain foods are bad for you. And indeed, we see that in the 3 meals a day, which this paper sets as the standard for the way human beings should eat, even though there's no research that proves that, they compared them to meal skippers. And so some of these people would skip breakfast, some would skip lunch, some would skip dinner. And then they crunched all the numbers from this study that was done decades ago and try to find some possible associations. Now, I want to tell you something about the group of people who were meal skippers. They tended to be younger than the 3 meal a day people. They tended to be males on average. They tended to be lower education, and we know what that does to all-cause mortality. The less educated you are, the more likely you are to die on average. They were in deeper levels of poverty. They were more likely to be smokers. They were more likely to be moderate to heavy drinkers. And they were more likely to suffer from food insecurity than the 3 meal a day people. So basically, this study, what it did in reality was it compared middle income, middle class people to poor, uneducated people who are in danger of starving because they don't have enough food in the pantry to stretch for 3 meals a day. So they wind up skipping a meal. The people are more likely to be smokers and moderate to heavy drinkers, both which have devastating impacts on your health and your longevity. So really, this is a study that compares two different lifestyles, the lifestyle of people with money and who can afford 3 full meals a day, and the lifestyle of poor, uneducated people who are smokers and drinkers who can't afford to have the pantries and the refrigerator full. It has nothing to do with intermittent fasting. Now, I just want to show you part of one table from the results of this study. This is for the breakfast skippers. And so there's 3 different models. And so the first, model 1, adjusted for age, gender, race, and ethnicity. Model 2 adjusted for those things, plus education, income, smoking status, alcohol intake, physical activity levels, total energy intake, and overall diet quality. And then Model C corrected for all those things, plus baseline diabetes, baseline hypertension, baseline hypercholesterolemia, baseline cardiovascular disease, baseline cancer, and body mass index status. Now, look over on the right of this chart. And those numbers on the far right, 1.38, 1.10, and 1.11, those are the hazard ratios. Now, a hazard ratio of 1 means there is no hazard. It's the same as the other variable in the study. A hazard ratio of 2 or higher, most researchers consider it to be important. We probably should look into that further. Notice the hazard ratio for Model 3 that's been corrected for all the things they can correct for. And keep in mind, this correction, everybody that was doing these corrections were humans. So do you think that they were able to adequately correct for smoking and alcohol use and poverty and BMI? No, they could just approximate the adjustment. But even with all those adjustments, the hazard ratio for the breakfast skippers was 1.11, which is almost 1, which means this is a tiny hazard ratio. And if you look at the confidence interval, it's 0.98 to 1.26, and so if you notice, the number 1 is included in the confidence interval, which means this doesn't tell you a damn thing. This could literally have been beneficial if it turned out to be 0.98. Or slightly bad for you if it turned out to be 1.26. But since it includes 1, you literally can't tell anything from this hazard ratio. That's the big earth-shattering discovery of this paper. So as I've already said 3 times in this video, this paper has nothing to do with people who are intentionally intermittent fasting as a method to improve their health, to lose weight, to increase the rate of autophagy, and all the other beautiful beneficial things that intermittent fasting does for you. So when you see a headline like this one from the Daily Mail, intermittent fasting, the celeb favorite diet followed by the Kardashians and Wahlberg, may raise your risk of an early death by 30%, study suggests, you can know that that's full of crap. The study itself is meaningless and doesn't have anything to do with intermittent fasting and does not show a 30% increase in your risk of death. Keep intermittent fasting. It's good for you. It's going to benefit your health in hundreds of ways. Always take every headline you see in mainstream media with a grain of salt, preferably several grains of salt. You're going to need it to protect you from the poison of those headlines. Hope this video helped. This is Dr. Berry. See you next time.